Velma. God, what do I even say? Velma is the newest adult animated, oh god, that's how you know it's already bad, comedy series that is currently airing on HBO Max. Velma Dinkley is of course based off of the character from the Scooby-Doo franchise, one of the most iconic, beloved, and decorated franchises of all time, and this being the newest piece of media to spawn from this franchise, it's really unfortunate what this is. The show, of course, is the hot topic of conversation right now, and to be completely real, I find a lot of the dialogue to be going on around the show to be really annoying, but also really interesting. It's almost like the show is concocted in a laboratory to really piss off that specific side of the internet. You know the one I'm talking about, this side. You know, the YouTube channels and the Twitter accounts that insist that they hate politics being incorporated into these entertainment franchises, but always make it political themselves. But the funny thing is that this show has done something secretly good. This show is so ungodly awful that I think it has united the human race. No matter your age, your gender, your race, your sexuality, where you lie on a political spectrum.
Oh, look at my African American over here.
We all hate this show. Velma quite possibly is one of the worst things that I have watched in a very, very long time. This is quite literally everything wrong with modern entertainment, animation, writing. As a fan of the Scooby-Doo franchise and these characters, it's really a shame to see what this is and how this even was allowed to be released. We'll of course be taking a look at the show today, what it's about, my issues with it, maybe a positive or two, but also what this show means as a whole, because there's a lot more stuff under the hood that I don't think too many people are paying attention to right now. Velma, as I previously mentioned, is an adult animated series, and I think that is the biggest thing we should take a look at. Just me personally, I'm not a big fan of adult animation, or at least I'm not anymore. I can still enjoy South Park and that Harley Quinn show, which it seems like Velma is trying to be like, are great, but a vast majority of the stuff coming out right now that I have consumed or briefly watched lean on the crutch of this is animation, but they're saying bad words and doing bad things, and let's be as crude as possible, and it's just so painfully not funny. This is exactly what Velma is. There is nothing different about this or anything that separates this from their contemporaries. It is just like every other adult animated series, but it just so happens to have Scooby-Doo characters in it. Nowadays it seems like every single movie or TV show has to be based off of some intellectual property or a sequel or a spin-off of something, and I feel like the show was originally its own thing, but Warner Brothers was like, no, this has to be based off an intellectual property. Which one do we got? Let's do Scooby-Doo. And maybe this was always supposed to be a Velma show based off of the Mystery Gang, but it just doesn't feel like it because these don't feel like those characters. Everyone in the show is insufferable. I like Mindy Kaling, okay? She was in The Office. She's getting an unreasonable amount of flack for this show, some really uncalled for. Yeah, she's not the greatest voice actress in the world, but also a lot of this comes down to the writing. As an attempt to, I guess, make this as edgy and vulgar as possible, the writers give these characters one singular personality trait and stick with that and make sure it's as unlikable as possible and then run it into the ground for the rest of the episodes. I have no problem with the characters being race swapped, I don't care. I do think dead naming Shaggy is kinda weird though, just call him Shaggy, you fucking weirdos. But one of the draws of Scooby-Doo are the characters, it's the Mystery Gang. You like just hanging out with them. There isn't some deep overarching narrative plot. It's just a fun time with fun characters who, yes, may be one note, but they're at least likable and you like watching them, but that is not the case here. Velma, the title character, is quite possibly the worst character in the show. In the original Scooby-Doo source material, she's sweet, she's kind, but she's also smart and witty. Here, Velma is the complete opposite of that. She takes the adult animated trope of being an unlikable character that's a dick to everyone, a complete hypocrite. It's basically just every single Twitter user. Annoying and unlikable. They try to add some layers to her character with some flashback sequences about some trauma with her mom, which goes on to play an element in the story throughout the show, but with this being juxtaposed to the main tone of the show, which is a crude comedy, you don't really feel any of the dramatic weight of these sequences, and with the character already being established as so unlikable, you just don't really care. Like I've mentioned before, the show is trying to be a comedy, but it just completely fails because it's not funny. It's doing the modern Hollywood thing of being self-referential and meta, which was really cool and novel of like 10 years ago, but it's been creeping its way into the screenplays of every form of media recently, and I think we as the audience are just kind of becoming desensitized to it, and it's becoming annoying. A part of being meta, in my opinion, is at least being self-aware and understanding of what you're making. The thing with Velma is also not self-aware. They unironically say like, hashtag this before something.
Baby's kicking. Hashtag get my new camera out of my bag.
One of the annoying things about the show is its political commentary. Now, don't get me wrong, I love politics. I'm a political guy. I'm a dirty, sneaky liberal, I'll say it. But the way that the show handles it is so disingenuous and awkward. It's like they're like, oh, young people are liberal. Maybe we can say some progressive things to get some brownie points out of these guys. So yeah, white privilege is a thing. I'm trying to watch a fucking show here. It's not even clever or remotely funny. Another adult animated series that is able to tackle politics and make it both funny and emotionally resonant is South Park. That show is almost entirely political. But Matt Stone and Trey Parker are actually like smart and creative. Oh, and funny too, so they're able to make that work. This just doesn't have any of that. But that's not all the show, and that's not the only reason why the show is bad. It's for all the stuff I've said before and the stuff that I'm going to say now. My biggest issue with the show is the fact that this is a Scooby-Doo show. If you're gonna take a franchise that was part of childhoods and is still kind of aimed towards children and make it all modern and edgy, at least do a good job with it, do something creative, utilize the IP in the best way you can. I'm all for the origins of these characters, how they meet, how they work together. Maybe the mystery gang will be formed at the end of the show, you never know. But once again, this show and these characters feel so incredibly disconnected from their counterparts that it comes to the point where the show is just utilizing the Scooby-Doo IP and name brand to prop up a terrible show to get it more time in the press and create more controversy around it to get more people talking. It's unintentionally, at least I think, crippling the Scooby-Doo brand. As I'm sure you're aware, the actual character of Scooby-Doo is not in Velma. Velma's in it, Daphne's in it, Fred's in it, Walmart bin Shaggy's in it, but the iconic pup is not in the show. Even though the creators of Velma insist that they never intended to have Scooby in the show, it's been reported that Warner Brothers Animation specifically directed them not to put Scooby in the show. I'm sure this is of course to protect the character and the brand, but what we got is still what we got and it didn't help anything. Regardless of if the dog is in the show or not, this is still a Scooby-Doo show with these iconic characters. And not only the show being the quality that it is hurts it, but the adult animation route of having this be overly grotesque, overly cruel, overly edgy does not help preserve the brand in any way. Just because they're human characters doesn't make it any different. I'm actually glad that they didn't put Scooby in the show because God knows what they would have had done to him. But my biggest question with Velma is how the show was even allowed to release. The Scooby-Doo franchise is of course owned by Warner Brothers, who has recently sold from AT&T to Discovery. The new CEO David Zaslav has stressed that they are all about preserving their IPs, their franchises, their properties, and really protecting them as a key word. Part of that is not putting out content that hurts the brand recognition of said IP. This is part of the reason why Batgirl was cancelled, and why a lot of stuff over there, including animation, is getting canned over there at Warner. One of these projects being the Scoob sequel Scoob Holiday Hunt, which I'm sure was shelved for monetary reasons, but also I'm assuming to protect the brand. The original Scoob film wasn't the best received. It was an attempt to start up a Scooby-Doo cinematic universe. It came out during the pandemic, it didn't perform the best both critically and financially. Like Batgirl, this film was near completion, so I was assuming that Warner would only put out the best content for their properties. Plus, Warner Brothers was canceling a bunch of animated programs. Animation is reportedly not said to be a priority over there at HBO Max, and Cartoon Network is probably never going to be the same again. A lot of people were speculating that this announced Velma show would eventually just be scrapped. But no, we're now sitting here in January of 2023, the show is out on HBO Max, and it's terrible. I am shocked that Warner Brothers allowed this to be released. When Warner Brothers is talking about preserving their IPs and making the best decisions possible for these properties to really protect them, part of that is releasing content that shows what these franchises represent, and this just doesn't do that. It's just another modern, overly cynical adult animated series that makes a complete mockery and is so disrespectful towards its source material. I'm not saying you can't do adult Scooby-Doo, you can make it work, and people have tried to make it work before. James Gunn, who worked on the original live-action Scooby-Doos, said that if he wanted to, he would be able to make a R-rated Scooby-Doo live-action movie. I'd be totally down for that, mainly because it's James Gunn, someone I have an immense amount of respect for. But when your quote-unquote adult take on the franchise is this, the least common denominator, the bottom of the barrel kind of entertainment, I'm not gonna give it the pass. It sucks because this show had potential. Once again, I like Mindy Kaling, I think it's actually animated really well, and I do think that the Scooby-Doo IP can work in this way, but it's complete disregard and lack of understanding of it. But it's terrible script, it's terrible characters, all of it combines to make an awful show that I have zero desire to watch any more of. I love Scooby-Doo, I think there's a lot of great Scooby-Doo content out there, I have a lot of nostalgia for the franchise. It just sucks because recently we haven't been getting a lot of great stuff. But I hope that this show and the reception to it shows Warner Brothers that this franchise means something to people and that it deserves some respect. If Warner Brothers is serious about preserving these IPs and protecting them, it shouldn't start and stop with DC, it should apply to everyone. And if they truly stick by that, I'm sure some great Scoob entertainment is on the horizon.
Wonder what you want right now, wonder what you want right now. Used to be proud about, used to be proud about it. Counting all my blessings and count my dollars. Make it all better tomorrow. I'll tell you how, bro. If you see me